Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Nick. I am clearly not Roberta Phillips, who is typically your host for these programs on Thursdays, but I'm filling in for Roberta today. She wasn't able to join us. My name again is Nick Brown. I am the COO for Communication and Outreach at the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. We're broadcasting to you live from Maryland. And we have a very special guest on with us today. Her name is Ashley Biggs, and Ashley works with the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. Welcome, Ashley.
Hey, how are you?
Doing pretty well. Thanks so much for joining us. So the goal today, everyone, is just to have a really fun, informal chat about what Ashley's work is about and what her organization does to benefit all of us here in Maryland, and ways that complements what we do here as a public library in Prince George's County. Ashley is a great colleague and supportive of everything that we do here in Prince George's County, and she does that for every public library system in the state, as well as all of the citizens of Maryland. So we really appreciate her work, and I know you'll appreciate it more once you know more about what she does. So just want to give you all a heads up that we will do audience Q&A towards the end. So you can feel free to type in questions in the chat or comment threads wherever you're watching us on. Again, we're live on Crowdcast, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So we'd love to have you joining the conversation, share the feed with your friends, help the knowledge get out there. I think there's a lot of great resources that you're going to learn about today that are really wonderful, and it's something that you invest in as a community member, and it's important that we all help spread the love and get these resources out to as many people as possible. So Ashley, tell us about yourself and what your job is like and how you got there in terms of a career path.
Oh my goodness. Was not expecting that one. My name is Ashley Biggs. I am the Marketing and Outreach Librarian for the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, Physically Handicapped. We're in the middle of changing our name, and I'll get into that a little bit later, I think. So I actually I didn't fall into the job, but I fell into this particular part of the job. I actually went to school for archiving and records management, and somehow went from New York to Louisiana and had a lot of fun there, being a genealogy and Louisiana history librarian, not knowing anything about Louisiana history.
Cool.
Then became a public library manager in Mississippi. And then one day I was like, I really love the outreach part, not being in the building. I decided to try here and ended up with an amazing group of people who really do believe that everyone has the right to read and everyone has the right to access technology. And it's been an absolute blessing here.
Awesome. So what does an outreach and marketing librarian, which is something that might have a different title in a lot of different settings, but there's a core kind of set of things that you would do regardless of how it's framed. So can you tell us a bit about that?
So my job, in a nutshell, is to, one, find and create opportunities to engage with individuals about our services. So that means a big chunk of my job is going out and connecting with not just patrons, but with community providers, public libraries, archives, museums, anybody who's willing to lend me a minute or two, and then trying to build a bridge between our services and theirs. And encompassed in that is marketing. That means I'm also responsible for the state library's website, all of our social media, our print materials that go out into people's hands. Those kind of fall to me for the most part, so that the message stays consistent, which is we are here to serve anyone who has a qualifying print disability. So I think I put before the pandemic, I was averaging about, work-wise, about 30,000 miles on my car.
Oh,
I mean, because I crisscrossed the state. Wow. I was out way out in one way, and then the next day I'm driving the next.
Wow.
And it was a lot of fun. I've met so many cool people. I've met, people like yourself. I've met librarians. I've met various library staff members. I've met patrons from all walks of life, and I get these great stories, and I come back and share them with my team, who then turns out and goes, okay, well, we need to provide this service, or we need to provide that service. Encompassed in that is I also provide programming that is built to be accessible. So it's accessible to everyone, regardless of skill set and regardless of any visual or physical impairments.
Great, thanks so much. So you probably know the corners of Maryland better than most people, which is pretty cool. I've been learning some new corners, for me at least, with the pandemic, and that, like, once I hit my threshold of like staying physically in the house all the time, of now we're doing little staycations or day trips out, and been exploring Southern Maryland, which is really beautiful and nice to check it out. So I'm envious that you've gotten to see the whole state.
But I've gotten to see them from inside my car. Now, remember that.
Yeah.
I go from building to building.
Yeah.
I have 4 kids. I got to be home.
Oh yeah, definitely. Cool. So tell us a bit about the basically the origins and the function of the State Library, and then also the LBPH.
Okay. So the Maryland State Library Agency, as it currently stands, was formed a very, very long time ago. It was originally under the Department of Education as the Division of Public Libraries. And we have a state librarian, Irene Padilla, who's amazing and supportive and loves what she does. Like, I kind of want to be her when I grow up. Mm-hmm. And she took the Division of Libraries and turned it into the Maryland State Library Agency. And their job, their big role, is to support public libraries in what they do. They provide, funding, resources, technology, training. They're an ear for people who have questions about services that they could provide or want to provide. And she has an amazing team working underneath her, which includes my boss, John Owen, who's the director of LBPH. And they all work in tandem to make sure that we are providing statewide services to public libraries and to patrons through LBPH.
Very cool. How does that structure compare to other states and their state libraries generally?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Every state kind of has their own way of doing it. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't really say.
Sure. So tell us a bit about like LBPH's day-to-day in terms of what are you doing and what types of services are you providing and who are your customers and how do we help you reach new customers? So
the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped was established actually 50 years ago, and it is a cooperating network library of the National Library Service for the Print Disabled. Our entire mission is to provide accessible reading options to those unable to see a book, hold a book, or who have an organic impairment that prevents them from reading. Things like dyslexia, receptive aphasia, stroke, those things that make it very difficult to hold a book and receive the print. So we provide services for those individuals in audio format, Braille format, and sometimes large print. And we work in tandem with public libraries across the state to cross-serve. A lot of individuals who have lost their vision rely on others who will go to the library, pick up books on CD, pick books in large print, and they connect with their local librarian who then refers them to us. Or they find us online, or there's thousands of ways to find us. But we try to encourage our patrons to use both resources because they are complementary, not competitive.
Gotcha. And this is something that exists in every state, right? Though it might have a different expression in that there's the national mm-hmm. network and then there's a state level agency, or in District of Columbia, it's part of the DC Public Library where these services are offered. My dad is a customer of your equivalent in Massachusetts, which is really great. And he tells me all the time about the great things that come by. And I used to work at Library Congress and had a lot of great colleagues at the national network level, which is cool.
Yeah, it's every state has one, and that's the cool part, is that we all kind of work together. to reach an underserved community. And if you move from Maryland to another state, you can take your player with you. You can take it with you. And we just send your data over to the next library and say, hey, you got a new person coming in. They want service. And
oh, cool.
It's that easy.
Awesome. What are I would guess that some folks on the customer side, and even those of us who staff libraries, might make assumptions about who the customers are. Like we might assume that they're all senior citizens or everyone's blind. And some of that might be the terminology which you were hinting at there's going to be a change with. But can you talk about the real breadth of the types of humans who benefit from the services?
Everyone benefits, regardless of whether or not you use our services. So, because it is open to everyone who qualifies, and that means it's non-discriminatory. You can live anywhere in the state of Maryland, apply for our services, and then, once approved, you're good to go. We serve those with a wide range of reading needs. We have individuals who are like myself, have severe dyslexia, and reading print makes no sense to me, but if I hear it, I totally get it. We serve people with low vision, no vision, inability to hold a book, turn a page. Perhaps they have, left or right neglect due to a stroke, or perhaps they've got, a temporary stay at a nursing home. We have individuals of all ages. We have individuals from all backgrounds who use our services, and it is a really great equalizer. So everyone can benefit.
Great. What are some of the kind of very traditional services that you offer, and then what are some of the things that people might not expect that are cool?
Okay. So traditionally, we provide, just like a general branch library, we provide books and magazines, except we send them through the mail. We actually send books with a little thing in a cartridge case directly in the mail. Yes, I keep my kid at home. We send the books out in the mail. We have over 110,000 titles at our disposal. You put them in a specialized player, easy peasy, and you listen to your books. If we send you Braille, we would send you that through the mail. We provide magazines in audio format in Braille. We try to provide a lot of readers advisory. It's no fun when you've reached the limit of, oh, I've read every single Nora Robert books there is. What else do you have? If you get me on the phone, I'm the romance junkie, so I've got a lot of names for you. But if you start talking, Westerns, I'm like, we work with patrons on an individual, personalized level to help find them what they want to read. Now, once you've read every book by British authors set in 1860 to 1865 with a red-headed heroine who is plus size and doesn't get married at the end, once you've read the only book we have, you might need to expand your taste.
Yes, yeah.
But that part is very traditional. Where we are not traditional is that we focus on accessibility for all. We provide accessible technology training. We provided to public libraries across the state accessible workstations. Those are computers that can be moved up and down depending on height needs. Computers equipped with JAWS, various screen adaptive technologies, a CCTV for private viewing of printed material, and we train staff on how to use it. We have an assistive technology coordinator specialist who teaches you one-on-one.
Wow.
You have a question. I need to know how to use my iPhone, and I have no mobility in my hand. What can I do? He can help you. We provide accessible college textbooks.
Wow.
If you're a student in Maryland and you are attending a 2-year or 4-year college and you need help, we're the person to go to. We provide, and this goes back to very similar services to branch libraries, but we provide programming and outreach opportunities. But ours look different. Most of our programs are done over the phone with no visuals, no access codes, no room codes to remember. It's very basic. You pick up the phone and join. And we do that because we want to make sure that we are reaching the most people we can, the largest audience we can. We are always looking to expand our services, and one of the things that we do is we connect with the local branch libraries to promote their services to our patrons and their programs, because we realize not everybody wants to come to Baltimore. Not everybody can drive to, our location. One, we don't have a lot of parking, but two, nobody wants to drive in the city. We get that. So we try to cross-promote local services that complement ours.
Cool. What types of new technology is out there in the world of access right now that you're all kind of looking towards as the future of your services?
Ooh. So we work with the National Library Service for the blind and print disabled, and right now this is the standard player. This is it. This 2-pound brick. This is the most basic thing that you could ever have. All the buttons talk to you. There's no need for instructions. It's all built right in. But the problem is it relies on, we rely on the U.S. Postal Service. That's not a bad thing. This is wonderful. Books delivered right to your door. No need for the internet. No need for anything. But we realize that times are changing, and NLS is looking for new ways to adapt. They've already started direct downloads through BARD, but now they're looking at, can we provide Braille displays to people? Can we provide, smart devices, things like that, because access is starting to be needed in more pockets of the state. And we're looking forward to one day working with Alexa and Google Home in a more simple manner. So the technology is there, it's just changing, and it's, trying to make sure that it's the right step forward. Funnily enough, when they came out with this player in 2009, it was after a big back and forth. They wanted, part of NLS wanted to be on CDs, books on CDs. That's where everyone's going to be. Well, they took a chance on something that was still kind of newish technology, which was the USB. Mm-hmm. And they're like, no, we're going to take a chance on this. This is going to be easier. And lo and behold, until we developed a bunch of cloud services and direct downloads, USB took the world by storm. So they're waiting to make the right move that will impact the most people.
Very cool. Do considerations about preservation ever come into those technology decisions, like the lifespan of a CD versus the current technology with those players?
Yeah, actually it does. I had a wonderful opportunity to tour the National Library Service, and because I'm an archivist at heart, I got to ask a lot of questions, which was fun. It started off with records, vinyl, then moved to cassettes. And for those who don't know what a cassette or vinyl is, I can show you. It's awesome.
Yeah, I will too.
Yeah. Well, my kids don't know what a cassette is. So
oh man.
I know. I feel like I failed. I have failed as a parent. They don't even know what a record is. And I'm like, ask them, how do you answer the phone? Like this? But one of the things that they have been working on was, because the lifespan of a cassette is much shorter and a CD is much shorter than this. A USB, unless it gets crushed or corrupted, can last thousands of uses. They are in the process of converting almost all of their materials. Right now they're working on cassettes. We're working on our local collection here in Maryland, things that we record ourselves, and putting them up on the cloud so that they don't get so they don't disappear. And that gets, of course, backed up and backed up and backed up. But what I tell my patrons is that there's only a couple of things you can't do with the USB. Don't put it in the microwave to dry it. It won't work.
Or decontaminate for COVID.
We haven't had that yet. We did have a microwave to dry it out though once. That was funny. Don't spray the inside of the player with some sort of cleaning agent. You can pretty much, I don't want to say drop kick this thing, but it's sturdy enough to where my 4-year-old can use it without me worrying about him breaking it. So the life expectancy of our technology is much higher than that of a CD.
Very cool. Just out of curiosity, what would the library be able to do to serve a customer who comes to you with requests for, like, say you want to be a writer and you want assistance with figuring out what the adaptive technology is to enable you to be able to do that if you're not already equipped for it? How would you handle a question like that might be outside of the kind of primary focus of what you do? But I'm sure you, as librarians and information professionals, you are about solutions no matter what. So I'm sure you're going to direct them to something else. So how would you tackle that type of question?
That's not an uncommon question, actually. So the first thing that we do is if they are someone who's losing sight, limited vision, and they've never used assistive technology, the first thing that we want to do is introduce that to them, whether it be through our one-on-ones or through our technology user group, which meets the second Saturday of every month, or whether or not we direct them to BISM or NFB or some other agency that doors, MDTAP, and I know I'm throwing out acronyms, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
National Federation for the Blind, Blind Industry Services Maryland, Department of Rehabilitation Services, and Maryland Technology Assistance Program. If we can't help them, we direct them there. As far as writing the story, like I want to write my memoir, I want to write a story about a child growing up in Minnesota. Cool. Let's get the basics down. Let's make sure you know the technology, you know how JAWS works, you know how a screen reader works. And then we will then provide you books and resources, just as a general branch library does, on how to write a story. Mm-hmm. And we're just there to answer your questions after that. We do encourage, again, our patrons to join writers groups. We encourage them to join book clubs at their local branch libraries, because they're going to find other people who are interested in the same things as they are. Cool.
So in the public library world and many other types of libraries now, we're all very focused on customer-driven acquisitions, which is library speak for if our customers want something, we do everything we can to get that to them because that's our job. We're not here to just stock things randomly. Though there's a certain amount of kind of very focused and deliberate acquisitions that happens. But how does that work with your services if, say, there's a book that a customer doesn't want in that 110,000 or whatever that large number was, and are you able to support the conversion, for example, from standard print to Braille, or add an audio recording if it doesn't exist? How does that all work?
So our library collection works in a couple of different ways. The first and foremost is that all of our materials that we house in-house come from the National Library Service. So the National Library Service adds about 5,000 to 6,000 books to their collection a year. That's the 110 some odd thousand books. That collection is either recorded by them, which means it takes longer because they have to wait for the date that the book is released to start recording. Or they negotiate with publishers to purchase a copy of the audio recording. One of the big differences between NLS and a public library system is that once that purchase has been made, it is a permanent part of our collection. It doesn't go away. With public libraries, there's licensing concerns, and that could sometimes mean that books are only available for, a short time, or you have to buy multiple copies. To support multiple users, the National Library Service buys one copy, and it becomes available to every person on the service at the same time. Locally, we actually record our own materials. We actually have a studio downstairs that supports volunteers. It's really cool. People come in and they read books about Maryland by Maryland authors. Anything we can squeeze under the title Marylandia, we will record. Again, it can take 6 months to a year for a book to be recorded because we are relying on volunteers. We have run into the situation where this book has not been recorded by NLS. It doesn't fit our mandate to record it. What do we do? So we offer two solutions. The first is that we ask them to connect to their local branch library to see if it's available in an audio format there. We also provide a secondary service called Bookshare. Bookshare is a nonprofit organization that has the same mandates and goals that we have, and provides text-to-speech conversion of books. So whereas our books that are recorded by us and NLS are human voice, books recorded by Bookshare are done so in a synthetic voice. Mm-hmm. And they're able to get those books out faster, and they're able to get out more. Now for Braille conversion, that's a little bit more difficult. Again, we rely on the National Library Service to do that, mostly because it is very time consuming. You have to have someone not only convert the file, you then have to proofread the file, then you have to print and bind, and that's very expensive to do.
With the Braille production process, and this might be getting slightly off topic, but I'm curious, and you as an archivist, I'm sure, equipped to handle the question. With the 5,000 or 6,000 new titles that are added to the collection each year, are those automatically printed in Braille to a certain number of copies or sets for each book, or does it become a print on demand situation at a certain point with things that are a bit more rare, given how large the volumes might be?
That's a really good question. It's not really one I am equipped to answer. I know that most books now that are being added to the collection are also being added in e-Braille, electronic Braille, for portable Braille displays. Print Braille is a wonderful, wonderful way of reading. It really is. It's very tactile. You get to turn a page. It provides multi-sensory input. That being said, the National Library Service can only print so many a year. And again, we rely on them to ship them to us when we request them. If there's a book that was printed, say, by the Minnesota Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, and you as a patron request it and we can find it, we ask them if they can borrow it. The same thing has happened with us, where we work with Maryland Humanities for One Book, One Maryland, or One Maryland, One Book, and we print the Braille copies and put them in our collection. If somebody in Wyoming wants that book in Braille, they contact their library, who contacts us, and we send it. So there is a lot of sharing across the country, but a lot of libraries don't do on-demand printing. It's usually a special project. Mm-hmm. And we rely on NLS to do the rest.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you. That was just my own curiosity.
No.
The not having used your services directly as much as some others might have, what is the kind of structure of the online catalog for learning what's available in the collection or going into search, and how does that relate to the national network?
Every library for the blind and print disabled has their own catalog. There is a national catalog, but that is a conglomeration of all the materials NLS provides, and what is provided locally at local branches. So you're going to end up seeing everything across the country. If you're a Maryland patron, you would go to our catalog, and it is a very text-based. There's no pictures of covers there. It's very limited in terms of like prettiness. It's just text. That is designed so that people with screen readers aren't fighting through images and extra erroneous material. You could search our catalog very much like you would search Amazon. I want books on dogs. Okay, we have 30,000 books on dogs across. I'm sorry, we have 30 books on dogs, which now you have to narrow your search and you go a little further and a little further. The flip side to that is that there is a kind of secondary catalog that is for direct downloads. So you're going to go into our local catalog and you're going to see a title and it's going to say download only, or all hard copies checked out, download only, or download. And that takes you to another site where you can search all the digital files from across the country and download immediately, without waiting on us, without any assistance. It just, there you go. The catalog is super easy to use, but if you're used to a catalog that's very picture driven, it will take a minute to get used to.
Gotcha. Cool. I think I know the answer to the next question, but I'm just going to ask it anyways. Public libraries, of course, have materials to serve a lot of different age groups, and from really strong youth collections and YA to adults, and we typically will have large print collections as well. How is that kind of balance reflected in your collection? Is it much more skewed towards adults, or does it have the same kind of balance between children's books, YA, and adults?
Oh, same kind of balance. It's really important to remember that because we are serving such a wide range of patrons and patrons with a wide range of reading desires, that our collection remain balanced. So the National Library Service and local libraries all work together to build a collection. Our collection, we are fortunate enough to have a collection development librarian who goes through every new available book and tries to get our hands on it. So as many copies as we can.
Very cool. So for someone who might be new to working in a public library setting, which I am new, even though I worked at Library Congress, it's like the big kahuna, but it's not focused in the way that a traditional public library is. What are the ways that we can apply the principles of accessibility that your library embodies all day, every day in our work more broadly? And I know that's a big...
It is, and it's also very subjective, because there are libraries across the state who are already doing a lot of wonderful things to ensure accessibility. The first and foremost is website. If your website is accessible, that means if someone is using a keyboard and not a mouse, they can still navigate. That if you have pictures, they are tagged, that everything is designed to be inclusive. That's going to be the first step. From there, it becomes what can be done, what can we do now, what can we plan for mentality. I know Prince George's very well, and I know that Prince George's goes above and beyond to ensure accessibility as often and as frequently as possible. There are, like today, there's cross promotion on various platforms that have different accessibility standards for everyone. There's captioning, there's ASL translation in some of the programs that have come out from the libraries. There's a direct dial-in service so that if I'm visually impaired and I don't want to fiddle with the screen, I can just call in and listen. If I come, there's also this wonderful thing that public libraries do, which is if they know a patron who's coming in has a special request, I'm visually impaired and I need to use a computer, they go over to the accessible workstations that we put in and they practice and they learn, and then they teach that to our shared patrons. So website, make sure that it's set and ready. Make sure staff know about the various technologies that are out there, and implement them as often as possible. Because if you just talk about it and then never do it again, you forget. And then I would say one thing that is just to make sure you're a welcoming place.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know a single library in Maryland that doesn't fit that description. And I've been in a lot of them.
Great. One other question that is an accessibility question, but it's not necessarily having to do with this is going to be a question about language access beyond kind of what would be traditionally considered accessibility, but multilingual access beyond English. And how does that get supported through the National Library and through the State Library? And do you face some of the same challenges that we do in the public library level in terms of publishers don't necessarily make the things available that we need in order to improve access for Spanish-speaking customers, for example?
Yes. The answer to that question is so the National Library Service does work very, very, very hard to provide materials in multiple languages. We have Spanish, we have Mandarin Chinese, we have multiple languages that are supported. The trouble is, just as you pointed out, if the publisher doesn't make that material available in a language that is requested and spoken by a native speaker, not someone who took 2, 3, 4 classes of French, but actually speaks fluent French, we're kind of stuck in this limbo position. To that end, the National Library Service will go and buy the book and then record it themselves with a French-speaking individual or a Spanish-speaking individual, and then they will make that recording available to our patrons. One of the nice things about the National Library Service is that we are able to go and get a book and just record it. There are some considerations for copyright, but in terms of like just protecting access, but we have that ability to make sure that everyone who has a print disability has the materials that they need.
Cool. How much cooperation is there between like our national library system and the national library systems of Canada or Mexico or other countries where there might be resource sharing or professional development or training that you all do together? Or I'm just curious to hear.
So I do know from looking at social media and from various listservs that there is some cross sharing. There are opportunities to engage with other libraries across the country, across the world that serve individuals with print disabilities. That's the extent of my knowledge. My guess is if they're anything like their cooperative network libraries, that they're pounding at the door of those other libraries going, hey, let me in, let me in.
Yeah. Great. Yes, here's a comment from John. The Marrakesh Treaty is opening up a lot of windows to cooperation and sharing of collections. That is true. Do you feel equipped to give us a snippet of what the Marrakesh Treaty is, Ashley?
Sure. Oh gosh, it just went right out my head.
Oh, that's fine. I'll pull it up.
So the Marrakesh Treaty was something that was recently in the U.S. ratified, and it allows libraries that serve the visually impaired communities across the world access published material and convert it as necessary. There was a huge consideration from the publishers in this treaty, and very much like how every book has a copyright, we have to respect that copyright. And even though we have the right to reproduce that book in a specialized format, the publishers' work had concerns that needed to be addressed. So the Marrakesh Treaty addresses that concern at an international level. And it also opens the door for libraries such as NLS to work with the libraries in England, libraries in France, to share materials, resources, and ideals.
Very cool. How do we collectively, as librarians and information professionals, ensure that what we do on like social media matches what we're able to do in the kind of more static expressions of what we do. So like the website, it's a lot easier to kind of ensure a certain level of accessibility on a website. But once we get into social media, I don't think we're all as equipped yet in terms of being consistent with alt text, for example. And
I'm not equipped.
no, none of us. I mean, and it all changes because the platforms make changes, and they don't necessarily even make folks aware of the changes when it happens. But what's your approach with that?
So I caption everything. I absolutely caption everything, and sometimes it's a one-line caption. Other times it's much more expansive. But I always, if I put up a picture, I make sure that it says image, dog sitting on grass with sunglasses reading a book, whether that be on Twitter or Facebook. A lot of social media platforms are not accessible. TikTok is one of my favorite apps, but it is not accessible. There's a lot of blind individuals on there, but they're relying on individuals to assist them at times. The best thing that anyone can do is make sure that their image is captioned, that if they look into their platform's alternative text abilities, and then if it's not there, start lobbying. The reason we have alt text on Facebook isn't because of necessarily because of the federal mandates, but rather because people were saying it is not accessible. You have to make it accessible. Twitter has pretty much been accessible because it was mostly text in the beginning. And they also followed suit and added alternative text. LinkedIn is another that's a lot of text-based, but there were problems connecting with the screen reader, and they've had to go in and provide that. So if you're using a platform like, say, you decide to use YouTube, caption the video, put a description, link to a transcript. It's more work for the librarian or the library staff member at first, but it does open a door, and it opens a door for people who end up becoming lifelong supporters of a library. And no, not everybody's equipped. There are some libraries that have one person handling social media, adult programming, websites, marketing, all of that. And, they're not able to train and learn. So, reach out, ask questions, talk to other libraries, talk to me, call me, I'm good, I'll answer.
You can tweet Ashley too.
Yeah, right. And pitch ideas. At the bare minimum, just try.
Great.
That's my soapbox. I'm a big.
No, that's great. Yeah, it's something that's since I've been in outreach and community engagement side as long as I've been in libraries, and there's oftentimes a discrepancy between like what's been arrived at as the requirements internally versus what is like now the best practice. Just given how policies and procedures lag behind perhaps the majority customer needs sometimes. So it's something that we kind of have to always be thinking about, and I've learned ways that we can improve ours today, which is appreciated. So these conversations are super, super important to have, and we appreciate you being a resource.
No, and that's the thing. That's what LBPH is for. We not only provide customer support to individuals using our services, but we're here to be a partner with the public libraries. We are not going to say no to, hey, can you check out my social media and make sure it's accessible, and I'll take a look at it, try my screen reader on and see how it goes. We can't rebuild your website for you. And we can talk about those things and be a resource without worrying that, you're going to, one of the things in library land is people go, well, I've got a silly question. There's no such thing. My job is to make sure that you have the tools that you need.
Great. So I'm going to invite folks who are tuning in to send in any questions if you've got them. And while you're mulling that over, I've got one more question for Ashley. And that relates to the upcoming 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is celebrated on July 26th, just 10 days from now. Can you talk to us a bit about the significance of the Americans with Disabilities Act in terms of supporting and complementing all of the work that you do in your organization?
So the Americans with Disabilities Act has opened a lot of doors. There's still a long way to go. It's opened a lot of doors, but as times have changed, a lot of people don't appreciate what it's there for. The benefit to our services is that we are able to then turn around and say, hey, we need this accommodation. This is reasonable under the ADA. This person has a qualifying impairment and they're on our service, and this is what we need to do to ensure that they receive services. And it's not like a battering ram at all. Some people go, oh, well, I can't comply with that request. And the truth is that you might not be able to the way you think, but if you try, that means a lot more. So it's a good first step. Mm-hmm. 30 years later, it's also become very harder to implement because of online services. They are governed, even though under ADA, there are still companies that don't, I've contacted them, because I want to buy a service or I want to connect with them for something for the library. And the first thing I do is check their website. Mm-hmm. If the website's not accessible, if they don't have an accessibility statement, I kind of look elsewhere because I want an organization that believes in that. And the ADA brought it to light, but there's a lot more work to do.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, kind of taking the specific topics within ADA aside. It seems very similar to the way copyright law exists and evolves, in that, when new legislation for copyright, whether it's the Marrakesh Treaty or the Millennium Digital, I know I'm screwing up terminology, but I think MDMA, is that right?
Yeah. Millennium Digital Records Act. Yeah.
At the point, and same thing with library policies and procedures, at the point of a law being enacted, that's a reflection of years and decades of advocacy needing to happen in order to get to that place. And by the time that's actually enacted, it's just like one marker in the long journey towards, becoming a more inclusive society and communities, including better accessibility in libraries and many other things.
So, and that's again, bringing it back to the services that we provide. That's why we're here. We are here to fill that gap, fill that need. The player, it's wonderful. It's durable. It has a 30-hour battery life. I can take it anywhere I want. I'm not stuck to the wall listening to a book or stuck to a TV. I can download it and put it on I can download books and put them on my mobile device and run with it. We provide services to those who have limited mobility in the arm through breath switches, remotes, things like that. We are constantly trying to evolve so that we can continue to provide the most access to the most people. And we're doing that regardless of the law. Yeah. We go above and beyond the law to the spirit of what it represents.
Awesome. Very cool. I'm not seeing any public questions so far, so keep pondering those, and we'll stay on for a couple more minutes. Another question I had, and a leading question for all of my questions usually, how important is it that people who might not have a permanent different ability, but a temporary different ability, whether that's from like a recent stroke or, maybe you had some kind of physical injury and your arms are in casts. How important is it for those folks to know that they are also able to access these services, even if they might only need the services for a temporary period?
Oh my gosh, it's so important. In most cases, people who sign up temporarily end up falling in love with audiobooks, number one. But I think it comes down to we're giving them a sense of freedom back. You know, if both your arms are in casts, you're relying on others to assist you. But if your arms are in cast and you're able to use the remote and start and stop the player and adjust your volume from across the room, that's your independence, freedom right there. So in cases of stroke, people read along, they listen to the audiobook and they're reading along in the print book to try to reconnect those that brain thing. I'm not a brain person, a brain connections there. And we have kids who started on our service in school because they were mildly dyslexic and they've managed to cope and they no longer need our services. Wonderful, great. Tell your friends.
Yeah, totally. Very cool. So what are the best ways that people can access your services, learn about them, send you questions?
Okay. So we have we have our website, which is lbph.maryland.gov. And I will put that in the chat before I forget. I'm a big forgetter. And is our main page. And on there, you're going to see a wide variety of our services reflected. Again, our accessible technology user group and trainer, our college textbook program, MAT, Maryland Accessible College Textbook Program, our teleconferences, our youth programs, all of that is on there. Connect with your local library. Libraries across the state have our application, and they're able to at least get you started in the right direction. The application is actually the hardest part of the entire thing. That's it. It really is. That's the hardest part. We ask you questions like, what kind of authors do you enjoy? And immediately you go blank, right? We give you a list of genres, but then we're like, and your authors? You never remember. The application is the hardest part. You can find it on our website. You can find it at your local library. You can find it on several places online. If you know someone that you think qualifies and you're not sure, download an application, read through it. The second page is the most important. That's the page where you have someone sign off saying that you meet the services criteria. That could be, an eye doctor. It can be a physician. It can be a social worker, depending on visual or physical impairment. Once you get to things like dyslexia, receptive aphasia, stroke, things like that, a medical doctor does need to sign off. Again, that's literally the hardest part. Once we get your application back, everything is smooth sailing, and it's literally you get books delivered to your door, you download them after that. It's great.
Cool. I thought of one more question, and then I'll let you get back to your life. For employers who might need help with figuring out how to support colleagues who need access to adaptive technology that maybe the employer hasn't had to support before, in a situation like that, can folks call LBPH, and would you direct them to the most appropriate kind of set of resources?
Yeah. And that is something that has happened. We direct them to the appropriate agencies and support services. And again, those agencies like the Department of Rehabilitative Services, Maryland Accessible Technology Program, Blind Industry and Services of Maryland, they are there to support the community at every level. So while there are gaps in what we can do, there are other agencies that pick up from there.
Awesome. And I'm sure it's reciprocal too. Do they send folks your way too?
All the time.
Yeah. Awesome.
All the time. And it's great. It's awesome.
Totally. Well, this has been really wonderful. I appreciate all of what you do, Ashley, in helping spread the word for LBPH, and we appreciate all of your colleagues and John for supporting you, joining us today. Folks who live here in Prince George's County, hope you have already known that you've benefited from all of these great services and resources. But this is a great opportunity to remind everyone of what is out there. And we're very lucky to have folks like Ashley who are super eager to help connect us all with the resources that we need in order to, as she said, achieve the independence that's going to really ensure that we have great quality of life. So we are grateful to you, Ashley, and grateful to the library, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate in many ways that I'm sure we haven't even figured out yet in the future as times change and as technologies change. But we appreciate being partners.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening and happy weekend. Stay safe. Wear a mask. Please wear a mask. Please wear a mask. That is my new PSA every time, everywhere. It's a good thing. I just ordered my sports logo masks yesterday to make myself happy. But it's an important thing that we've all got to do. So.
See, I went with Baby Yoda.
Oh, wow.
I went with Baby Yoda.
Well, now you can. I'm sure with the Nationals have a deal with Star Wars where they do like Star Wars stuff. They should do a Nationals Baby Yoda.
They should.
Yes.
They should.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Bye-bye.